Ludmila Pavlichenko Lady Death. Imagine being a 25-year-old woman standing before a crowd of American men in Chicago in 1942. The United States has been in World War II for less than a year. American soldiers are training, but they haven't fully committed to the fight in Europe. You step up to the microphone, look at the audience through your interpreter, and say, "Gentlemen, I am 25 years old, and I have killed 309 fascist occupiers by now. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" The crowd falls silent, then erupts in applause. You are Ludmila Pavlichenko. You are Lady Death. You are the deadliest female sniper in human history. You've killed 309 enemy soldiers in just over a year of combat, including 36 highly trained German snipers. The Germans are so terrified of you that they've tried to bribe you with chocolate and promises of an officer rank. When that didn't work, they threatened to tear you into 309 pieces. You've been wounded 4 times. You've watched friends die in your arms. You've survived sieges, artillery barrages, and counter-snipers sent specifically to kill you. And now you're touring America, meeting Eleanor Roosevelt and challenging an entire nation to step up and fight. By the end of this video, you'll discover how a university history student became the Soviet Union's most feared sniper, why American reporters asked her about lipstick instead of her 309 kills, and how one woman's courage helped change the course of World War II. Stay with me, because Ludmila Pavlichenko's story will show you what it means to fight for your country when the world doubts you can. Part 1. The Competitive Girl. Childhood and Early Years. The story of Ludmila Mikhailovna Pavlichenko begins on July 12, 1916, in Bila Tserkava, a large town in Ukraine, then part of the Russian Empire. Ludmila was born into a working-class family. Her father was a government employee, her mother a teacher. They weren't wealthy, but they valued education and encouraged their daughter to pursue her interests. From her earliest years, Ludmila was competitive, especially with boys. She described herself as a tomboy who loved proving that girls could do anything boys could do, and often better. She competed in athletics, ran races, and refused to back down from any challenge. When Ludmila was 14, her family moved to Kyiv, now the capital of Ukraine. It was in Kyiv that Ludmila's life took a turn that would define her future. One day, Ludmila overheard a boy bragging about his achievements at a shooting club. He was boasting about how good he was, how accurate, how much better than everyone else. Ludmila, annoyed by his arrogance, thought to herself, "If he can do it, so can I." She signed up for a sharpshooting class at one of the thousands of amateur shooting clubs across the Soviet Union. Marksmanship was encouraged in Soviet society as a form of military preparedness and civic duty. Young people, both men and women, were trained in shooting as part of paramilitary organizations. Ludmila discovered she had a natural talent. She was patient, focused, and had exceptional hand-eye coordination. Within months, she earned her Voroshilov Sharpshooter Badge, a prestigious civil decoration for marksman certification. Shooting became Ludmila's passion. She practiced constantly, competed in local competitions, and won repeatedly. But shooting was just a hobby. Her real ambition was to become a historian. At age 16, Ludmila married and gave birth to a son, Rostislav. But the marriage didn't last. The couple divorced, and Ludmila's parents helped raise Rostislav while she pursued her education. In 1937, Ludmila enrolled at Kyiv University to study history. It was a dream come true. She loved learning about the Soviet Union's past, about revolutions and leaders and the forces that shaped nations. She also studied Latin and English. She was an excellent student with a bright future ahead of her. But Ludmila didn't stop shooting. She enrolled in a 2-year course at the Osoaviakim Sniper School in Kyiv. The course wasn't just about marksmanship. It covered ballistics, firearms mechanics, camouflage, tactics, and theory. Ludmila graduated with excellent results, especially in practical shooting. By 1941, Ludmila Pavlichenko was in her 4th year of university, well on the way to becoming a history teacher. She was 24 years old, a divorced mother, a university student, and a skilled markswoman. Then, on June 22, 1941, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union, and Ludmila's life changed forever. Part 2. Volunteering for war. Joining the Red Army. When Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history, 3 million German soldiers poured across the Soviet border. The attack was swift, brutal, and devastating. Soviet forces were caught off guard. Entire divisions were encircled and destroyed. Cities fell within days. The Soviet Union called for volunteers. Men and women across the country rushed to recruitment offices. Ludmila Pavlichenko was among the first. The day after the invasion, she went to the Odessa recruiting office and requested to join the infantry. She wanted to fight. But the registrar looked at this young woman and immediately tried to steer her towards being a nurse. "You should be a nurse," he said. "That's where women are needed." Ludmila refused. "I'm a trained marksman. I can fight." The registrar was skeptical. Women weren't supposed to be in combat roles. They were supposed to support the men, not fight alongside them. But Ludmila showed him her certificates, her Voroshalov sharpshooter badge, her sniper school diploma, and her competition wins. Finally, reluctantly, the registrar accepted her. Ludmila Pavlichenko was assigned to the Red Army's 25th Rifle Division as a sniper. She was one of about 2,000 women who would serve as snipers in the Red Army during World War II. Only about 500 would survive. It was a 75% casualty rate. But when Ludmila arrived at her unit, she faced another problem. There weren't enough weapons. The Soviet Union had been caught unprepared, and rifles were in short supply. Ludmila was initially assigned to digging trenches and communication routes. She was given a single RGD-33 grenade for defense. It was incredibly frustrating. She later wrote, "It was very frustrating to have to observe the course of battle with just a single grenade in one's hand." Then, in late July 1941, a fellow soldier was severely wounded by shrapnel. As he lay dying, he handed Ludmila his rifle, a Mosin Nagant Model 1891 bolt-action rifle. It was a basic weapon, but in Ludmila's hands, it would become deadly.
Part 3. Baptism by Fire. First Kills. On August 8, 1941, Ludmila Pavlichenko was positioned near Bilyivka, outside of Odessa. German and Romanian forces were advancing. Soviet troops were desperately trying to hold the line. Ludmila lay in position, watching through her rifle sights. In the distance, she saw 2 Romanian officers advancing, trying to scout Soviet positions. Ludmila aimed. She had trained for this. She had shot thousands of rounds in practice. But this was different. These weren't targets. These were men. If she fired, they would die. Ludmila hesitated. Her finger was on the trigger, but she couldn't pull it. Fear and doubt paralyzed her. Then a young Soviet soldier set up position next to her. He was friendly, smiling, trying to reassure her. Before they could even exchange words, a shot rang out. A German sniper had fired. The bullet struck the young soldier in the head. He died instantly, collapsing next to Ludmila. Ludmila later said, "He was such a nice, happy boy, and he was killed just next to me. After that, nothing could stop me." Ludmila raised her rifle, aimed at the 2 Romanian officers, and fired. 1 shot, 1 kill. She chambered another round, another shot, another kill. Her baptism by fire was complete. Ludmila Pavlichenko had become a combat sniper. Part 4. The Siege of Odessa, racking up kills. For the next 2.5 months, Ludmila fought in the Siege of Odessa. The city was surrounded by Axis forces, outnumbered and outgunned, but the Soviet defenders held on with fierce determination. Ludmila operated as a sniper, lying in concealed positions for hours, waiting for targets. She became expert at camouflage, at reading the battlefield, at predicting where enemy soldiers would appear. And she killed. Constantly. By the end of August 1941, just 3 weeks into combat, Ludmila had 100 confirmed kills. Let that sink in. In 3 weeks, this 25-year-old history student killed 100 enemy soldiers. She was promoted to senior sergeant. Ludmila later described her work in chilling terms. "We mowed down the Hitlerites like ripe grain." She preferred using a semi-automatic SVT-40 rifle, which allowed her to fire multiple shots quickly. But she was skilled with any weapon. Her accuracy was extraordinary. Her patience was infinite, and her kills kept mounting. By October 1941, when Odessa fell and the 25th Rifle Division was evacuated to Sevastopol in Crimea, Ludmila had 187 confirmed kills. She was 25 years old and had been in combat for less than 3 months. Part 5. The Siege of Sevastopol, Becoming a Legend. Sevastopol was a fortress city on the Crimean Peninsula. The Germans launched a massive assault to capture it, throwing hundreds of thousands of soldiers and massive artillery into the siege. The fighting lasted 8 brutal months, from October 1941 to July 1942. Ludmila fought through the entire siege. She was given increasingly dangerous assignments, including the most feared role of all: counter-sniping. Counter-sniping meant hunting enemy snipers. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse. Both snipers were searching for each other, both waiting for the other to make a mistake. One mistake meant death. Ludmila engaged in multiple sniper duels. One particularly famous duel lasted several days. A hugely skilled German sniper had been killing Soviet soldiers from a bombed-out bridge. Ludmila was assigned to eliminate him. For days, the two snipers stalked each other. Neither could get a clear shot. It was a test of patience, nerves, and skill. Finally, the German sniper made a tiny mistake. He shifted position slightly, exposing himself for a fraction of a second. Ludmila fired. 1 shot. The German sniper was dead. Out of Ludmila's final tally of 309 confirmed kills, 36 were enemy snipers. Each one was a trained, experienced marksman, and Ludmila killed them all. By May 1942, Ludmila had been promoted to lieutenant. Her confirmed kill count stood at 257. She was a living legend within the Red Army. The Soviets called her Lady Death. The Germans called her the Russian bitch from hell. The Germans knew about Ludmila Pavlichenko. Her reputation had spread through enemy lines. German soldiers feared her, and German command decided to try to turn her. Over loudspeakers aimed at Soviet positions, the Germans broadcast messages. "Ludmila Pavlichenko, come over to us. We will give you plenty of chocolate and make you a German officer." Ludmila laughed. She wasn't interested. When the bribes didn't work, the Germans resorted to threats. "If we catch you, we will tear you into 309 pieces and scatter them to the winds." Ludmila's response? "They even knew my score." Part 5. Wounded and Withdrawn. End of combat service. In June 1942, during intense fighting in Sevastopol, a German mortar shell exploded near Ludmila. Shrapnel tore into her face, causing serious injuries. Blood poured from the wounds. She was evacuated to a field hospital. Ludmila had been wounded 4 times during her combat service. She had also suffered from shell shock, what we now call PTSD. But she had always returned to the front lines. Not this time. Soviet High Command made a decision. Ludmila Pavlichenko was too valuable to risk losing. She had become a symbol, a hero whose death would demoralize Soviet troops and civilians. She was ordered evacuated from Sevastopol by submarine. Ludmila's combat career was over. In just over a year of fighting, she had killed 309 confirmed enemy soldiers. She was 25 years old.
Part 7. The American Tour. Meeting Eleanor Roosevelt. In autumn 1942, with the Battle of Stalingrad raging and Soviet forces desperately holding on, Soviet leadership decided to send a delegation to the United States. The goal was to convince Americans to open a second front in Europe, to attack Germany from the west and relieve pressure on the Soviet Union. The delegation included 3 people: Nikolai Kravchenko, a Moscow fuel commissioner; Vladimir Pechelentsev, a fellow sniper; and Ludmila Pavlichenko. Ludmila was chosen because she was a hero, a young woman with an extraordinary combat record. The Soviets hoped her story would inspire Americans and shame them into action. In late 1942, Ludmila arrived in Washington, D.C. She became the first Soviet citizen ever received by a U.S. president when Franklin D. Roosevelt welcomed her to the White House. But Ludmila's experience in America was complicated. The American press didn't know what to make of her. They called her the girl sniper, focusing on her appearance rather than her achievements. Journalists asked her absurd questions. Do Russian women wear lipstick at the front? What kind of makeup do you use? Why do you wear a uniform that makes you look fat? Do you curl your hair? Ludmila was stunned and offended. She had killed 309 enemy soldiers. She had survived sieges and artillery barrages. She had faced death countless times. And American reporters wanted to know about her lipstick? She responded sharply, "I wear the uniform of the Red Army with pride. It is covered with the blood of my comrades who have fallen in battle. I wish you could experience a bombing raid. Then you would forget about your outfit." But Ludmila found an ally in First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. Part 8. The Friendship. Ludmila and Eleanor. Eleanor Roosevelt was fascinated by Ludmila. Here was a young woman who had done extraordinary things in what was considered a man's world. Eleanor invited Ludmila to tour the country with her, speaking at rallies and gatherings. The 2 women formed a genuine friendship. They spent weeks traveling together across America. Ludmila stayed at the Roosevelt estate in Hyde Park, New York. One night, Eleanor altered a pair of her own pajamas so Ludmila could wear them. As Ludmila changed, Eleanor saw a long reddish scar running from her shoulder to her spine. Shrapnel from Sevastopol. Eleanor was moved. She embraced Ludmila and said, "What dreadful ordeals you had to endure." Eleanor later wrote, "There is something very charming to me about the young Russian woman, Junior Lieutenant Ludmila Pavlichenko. She has suffered, and is suffering, something which is universal and binds the world together regardless of language." As the tour progressed, Ludmila's message became bolder. In Chicago, she stood before a crowd of men and delivered the speech that would become legendary. "Gentlemen, I am 25 years old and I have killed 309 fascist occupiers by now. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" The crowd erupted in applause. Ludmila toured factories, met with workers, spoke at universities. She was given gifts, rifles, pistols, even a Colt semi-automatic pistol from the U.S. government, and a Winchester Model 70 rifle with a telescopic sight from Canada. The American folk singer Woody Guthrie even wrote a song about her, Miss Pavlichenko. Part 9. Return to the USSR. Training snipers. After her tour, Ludmila returned to the Soviet Union. She was promoted to major and awarded the Gold Star of Hero of the Soviet Union, the highest honor in the USSR. She also received the Order of Lenin twice. But Ludmila never returned to combat.
Instead, she spent the rest of the war training new snipers. She taught them everything she had learned: camouflage, patience, breath control, ballistics, psychological warfare. The snipers she trained went on to kill hundreds of enemy soldiers. After the war ended in 1945, Ludmila finally returned to her original dream. She completed her studies at Kiev University and became a historian. She worked as a senior researcher for the Soviet Navy. In 1957, 15 years after their tour together, Eleanor Roosevelt visited the Soviet Union. She insisted on seeing Ludmila. Despite Cold War tensions and Soviet minders watching them constantly, the two women found a moment alone. They laughed, reminisced, and caught up on each other's lives. It was the last time they saw each other. Part 10. The Cost of War. Final Years and Death. Ludmila Pavlichenko never fully recovered from the war. She suffered from severe PTSD, depression, and alcoholism. The memories of combat haunted her. The faces of the men she had killed haunted her. The friends she had lost haunted her. She struggled in silence for decades. The Soviet Union had no mental health programs for veterans, no treatment for PTSD, no recognition that warriors could be broken by what they had seen and done. On October 10, 1974, Ludmila Pavlichenko died from a stroke. She was only 58 years old. She died in her son Rostislav's arms. The Soviet Union honored her with 2 commemorative postage stamps, one issued in 1943 during the war and another in 1976 after her death. Today, in Russia and Ukraine, Ludmila Pavlichenko is remembered as a hero. She is recognized as the deadliest female sniper in history. Streets, schools, and monuments bear her name. But her legacy goes beyond kill counts. Ludmila proved that women could fight, that they could be just as effective in combat as men, that courage has no gender. She challenged American audiences to do more. She befriended a first lady. She inspired a generation. And she paid the price for it for the rest of her life. Conclusion. The meaning of Ludmila Pavlichenko. So, what can we learn from the life of Ludmila Pavlichenko? First, that courage comes in many forms. Ludmila was terrified in her first combat engagement, but she overcame that fear and became one of the deadliest snipers in history. Second, that gender does not determine capability. In a world that told women they couldn't fight, Ludmila killed 309 enemy soldiers. Third, that heroes are human. Ludmila suffered from PTSD, depression, and trauma. She struggled for decades after the war. Heroism doesn't mean you don't suffer. It means you keep going despite the suffering. And finally, that standing up for yourself matters. When American reporters asked Ludmila about lipstick instead of her accomplishments, she didn't smile politely. She called them out. She demanded respect. And she got it. Ludmila Pavlichenko, the history student from Kiev, became Lady Death, the deadliest female sniper in history. She killed 309 enemy soldiers. She challenged a nation to step up. She befriended Eleanor Roosevelt. And she showed the world what women are capable of. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share this video. We've completed day 4 with 3 incredible stories of warriors whose courage changed history. Until next time, remember what Ludmila Pavlichenko proved: that when your country calls, when your people need you, you answer, no matter who you are.